All right, so the market hustle brings up a very, very, very good point here that I wanted to talk about. Treat investing like it's your most important monthly bill because it is. And that is 100% on point, right? And the question is, well, why is it your most important bill? Well, it's your most important bill for two reasons. No, I mean, I guess it depends on how you look at the term investment. I think that there's two. I think a better way of putting it is treat saving money like it's your most important bill, right? Because I think there's two aspects here. Number one, you need a emergency savings account or a saving whatever. This is money that is in a savings account, or maybe it's in short-term T-bills, something that is very liquid that will not go down no matter what, right? I mean, maybe it's a money market account, you name it, but it needs to be something that you can get at very soon and is liquid, right? I mean, there are things that maybe they're super safe, but they're not liquid, right? I mean, if I needed it tomorrow or even a week from now, could I get it? Right? I mean, a GIC, maybe that's something that, yeah, it's a guaranteed return, but it may be, you might not be able to get it for a year or whatever the time is, right? So that's the first thing I think, is that you need an emergency savings account, right? Now, the question there is, well, how much should it be? The traditional advice is 3 to 6 months. My opinion is 3 months minimum. After that, do what makes you feel comfortable. But I would say 3 months salary should be your absolute minimum. So, I mean, average person's making about 70,000. So yeah, you should be, I don't know, 15 to 20, 15,000 roughly, right? Again, is that enough to make you sleep at night? At least, I mean, a lot of people yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people, I mean, probably 50, 60% of people live paycheck to paycheck. So I get a better way of putting it would be, what is a realistic, bad, unexpected expense that could come up, right? I mean, your roof, your furnace, your fridge, your washer and dryer. Again, those are all things that range from, I don't know, 1,000 or two to, I don't know, what does it take to do a roof these days? Up 20, maybe 30 grand. So in my opinion, if you're an average person, you need at least $15,000, $20,000 in a savings account. For me, 20 I'd be comfortable with. Now, the other important thing is investing, right? Investing. How much should you be investing, right? I mean, the more the better, right? Because your investments are what are going to buy you financial freedom and going to buy you your freedom in general. There's nothing the government is going to do that is going to help you out significantly. People whose plan is EI, or sorry, not EI, but CPP or pension, whatever it is, old age security in the States. If that's your plan, yeah, that number one, that's a terrible plan, and it's not going to work out, right? I mean, and again, why am I saying what I'm saying? Well, I again, in the job I do, I see, not all the time, but it's often enough. I mean, it's actually borderline all the time, to where, again, a bill that's maybe 1, 2, maybe 3,000, 4,000 comes up, and you would not believe how many people can't afford it. And the thing that's even scarier is how many people that are 60 years old that can't afford it. Again, if a 5,000 bill is even a $2,000-$3,000 bill, that's insane. But if a $5,000 bill is a massive shock to your finances, and you're 50, 60, even 40 years old, hell, even 30, you have gone seriously wrong, seriously wrong along the way. And again, if you're retired, my only response is, why in the world are you retired? Right? Why in the world are you retired? Right? And again, a big problem is we don't emphasize saving and investing. We don't teach this stuff in school. And again, I think that that's intentional. Again, do I have proof that there's some grand conspiracy? I don't necessarily believe that's the case. I simply believe that, number one, governments want people to be reliant on them, and number two, I mean, look at how much money credit card companies make. Look at how much money. I mean, look at how much money a lot of these business. I mean, go through the S&P 500. I mean, how many of these companies would be where they're at if everybody only lived within their means? I mean, everybody wouldn't be buying the new iPhone all the time, right? Everybody wouldn't be buying a new Tesla. Everybody wouldn't be ordering a lot of stuff they don't need on Amazon, right? Like, again, so these are just, a handful of these big companies, right? Google, I mean, you're more the product, right? But that's just the point I'm trying to make here. So again, the government doesn't want it and the corporations don't want it. So essentially every higher power doesn't want that to change. So I don't think that there's necessarily one group of people, but there isn't a lot of incentive for that stuff to be taught. Right? So that's the first thing I would bring up. But again, when it comes to investing, I mean, I want to retire. I mean, ideally, I want to retire in 10 years. Right? I mean, if that's not your goal, then what are you doing? I mean, maybe you're even better. I mean, if you're at the point where you can retire even sooner, I mean, if you're like 55, 60, okay, well, yeah, you should be retired or very close to it. But that's not the thing. Like, the goal should always be, how do I retire, and ideally sooner, but let's be realistic here. 10 is probably even pushing it, but that's my goal, right? How do you do that? And how you're going to do that is you got to be investing at least $1,000 a month, right? I mean, the traditional advice is whatever, 10, 15%, right? So again, if your take-home pay is $4,000 a month, which is probably roughly what the average is, okay, you should be investing $400 to $600. I don't think that that's a bad plan, because if you do that and you do that consistently, yeah, that'll be over $1 million, very close in 30 years, definitely in 40 years, right? So I don't think that that's a bad plan. But if you can do 1,000, you're going to cut that time in half. If you can do 1,500, you're going to cut it in half again, right? Again, people just don't understand this stuff. I mean, gun to your head, if you were if someone said, could you come up with $1,000 a month? I mean, someone making an average salary, and you probably could, right? Live more within your means, right? Again, how many people out there go broke trying to look rich? And even if you do make good money, you make, $200,000 a year or whatever, it's like you could be fabulously wealthy and retired in 10 years if you simply saved half your take home and still lived on, what an average person would take home, right? So for all the people out there that make well above an average salary, live like an average person, save the difference, and you'll be retired so much sooner. Why would you not want that? Right? That's the one thing that really doesn't make sense to me. Right? Now, again, I'm not saying you can't splurge ever, but the last thing I'll leave it at here is there is a endless amount of free info, free resources out there, right? If you are struggling at anything and you are not trying to improve your situation, I don't even have words for people at this point. Now, again, there's a lot of problems people face that I think is a lot easier to fix than not. But if you are broke and you are not listening to a podcast or anyone for that matter, or maybe you're reading, if you haven't even attempted to do that, I don't know how anyone has sympathy for you, right? Again, every single financial advisor, anyone that has a minute understanding of financial knowledge, if you want to put it that way, will tell you you need an emergency savings account, right? That you do not touch unless you absolutely need it, right? You lose your job, car breaks down, some very unforeseen expense, right? But yet we probably have the majority of the population that does not have that, right? And based on that fact, if someone ends up in that situation, how can you feel sorry? Like, how can a sane person feel sorry for them? I'm not saying there's some people that don't deserve sympathy, because some of them do. Some people legitimately face really bad luck. But most people that end up in those situations, they ignored the advice, right? They spent their money in a bad way, In which case, why would you have sympathy? That's a big thing that is causing a lot of issues out there these days, right? So again, I will sum it up here. Saving money is your most important bill, right? If you treat it like it's your most important bill, there's no other option. If you treat it in a similar fashion to your mortgage, if I don't pay my mortgage, I'm gonna lose my house. If I don't pay car insurance, I'm gonna lose my car. If I don't buy food, I'm gonna starve. If you think of it in the same way, that saving money is every bit as important as not starving, if you think of it in that way, you're going to be successful, right? And in my opinion, I think it's pretty hard to deny, there is no excuse for not doing it, right? And again, everybody's going to be able to do a different amount. I'm not saying everybody needs to be doing $1,000 a month or whatever. Some people, $50 a month might be all you can do. If that's all you can do, you do it, and you don't make excuses. So anyway, very good point by The Market Hustle. A good follow if you don't follow them on Twitter and Instagram. Again, if you liked the video, again, I appreciate all the support. I'd love to hear comments, feedback, any of that stuff I really like to hear. And also, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe.